listening to Cents Per Mile with your host, Charles Gracie, and his co-host, Paul Gibson. Joined by Josh Haynes, they'll be tackling tough industry topics, asking even tougher questions, all to find better solutions as they try to make sense make sense.
Thank you for tuning in to Cents Per Mile. I'm your host, Charles Gracie.
And I'm your co-host, Paul Gibson.
Hey, I'm Josh Haynes. What's up, guys? What are we talking about today?
We're talking about how to cut through the noise and make sure your job offer is memorable, so it just doesn't sound like all the other junk out there.
It's true. I mean, when you're in a giant sea of just ads that drivers are getting bombarded with, you know, like, you got to make sure like your stuff pops, because if your stuff doesn't pop, then it's like, what's separating you from the other thousands of carriers out there?
Before we dive into that, though, you know, I do want to touch upon real quick who helps us make this show happen, and that's CDL Life, who's got the world's largest driver audience in hot seat services. You know, huge shout out to them. You guys should reach out to them. Hot seat services can help put drivers in your trucks, and CDL Life can help you brand those drivers.
All right, cool. So now it's time for our segment, Behind the Wheel. So it's time for Behind the Wheel, where we basically poll CDL Life's audience to get real opinions from real drivers about issues. And with them having the largest driver audience in the world, some pretty good data points. So this week's topic, we decided to ask the audience, how many driving jobs do you typically apply for when you're looking for a new company? 38% said one carrier. 16% said more than one, less than five. And 44% said multiple carriers. And in fact, I saw some of the comments, and some of them just said, I machine gun that. You know, all of them. 200. One person said 200, which I think was hyperbole. But that is interesting. You know, with the concept of, you know, cutting through the noise. It's important to note how many different carriers, you know, at this point, what is that? So that's 60% of these drivers aren't just applying to you. So you need to do something to make sure that your offer is memorable.
Well, and you've been doing this for some time. You know, you and I have talked about this. You've been on multiple sides of it. So have I. In your expertise, Paul, you've expressed several of times that drivers are not just applying at one job. So even if you're buying a direct lead, the driver himself or themselves has made it a match lead at some point because of the amount of companies they've applied for, and the importance of what you do. You know, putting good video content out there to try to stand out. I mean, that's a passion of yours. That's something that you've taken your experience as a recruiter and applied to what you do now for exactly this reason. So I think you can shed some light on this.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the big thing is, you know, like the number one thing I tell companies, because I feel like a lot of people, and we'll definitely get into this later, but, you know, just the cliff notes, the most important thing is figuring out what's special about your company. And most companies feel like they know what's special, or they hear what other companies say are special, and they think that's what drivers want to hear. And with that, it all ends up looking the same. You know, they say like, oh, you know, excellent equipment, this, that, or the other. You know, honestly, a lot of companies have similar equipment to other companies. A lot of companies have similar pay. They have similar, you know, home time expectations. Ultimately, what I always tell people to do is go find 5 to 10 of your drivers and say, what is your favorite part about working here specifically compared to anywhere else you worked, or just in general? What is your favorite part about working here? And I guarantee you, the majority of the people you ask, there's going to be a reoccurring theme. And whatever that one thing is what you should be doubling down on to make sure, you know, you double down on that, because then that is going to be what makes your company sticks out. That's what they're going to hear on the phone with the recruiter. That's what they're going to hear from other drivers. And ultimately, that's the one thing that's going to actually make your company special in a sea full of other companies. All right, cool. Well, it's time to move on to This Week in Recruiting. All right, so it's time for This Week in Recruiting, where we ask Charles what's going on this week in recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, so this week in recruiting, we're going to talk about round robin versus first come, first serve distribution, and recruiting department. And so you'll see these laid out in each recruiting department slightly different. Even what we do at Hot Seat is way different than what most carriers will deploy out. So you have to apply what's going to work best for your organization. But I encourage people to try the different ones. So I'm going to break them down real quick. Round robin. When the lead comes in, it's going to be distributed amongst the recruiters evenly. So one goes to recruiter A, one goes to B, one goes to C. And it goes in a sequence. First come, first serve. You put them on a list. I also call this the Shark Tank method. This is what we deploy at Hot Seat, where all the leads going to one common list, and the recruiters are working that list, and they don't get to take them off that list until they got the driver on the phone, engaged and processing at some point through the motions to be brought aboard. I think that there's values to each one. There's certain metrics that you can get off a round robin that you can't get off the Shark Tank method. But there's certain efficiencies that come with the Shark Tank method that give you a higher ROI on your marketing dollars spent. So when you have a round robin, if recruiter A is off or slacking or having a bad week or whatever, those leads are kind of held captive on that list. They're kind of held hostage. And you're at the mercy of that person efficiently working that list. But you can get metrics as far as how many leads equal an app for that recruiter, how many apps equal hire. There's certain metrics you can get because that lead lived on that recruiter's list that entire life cycle. When you're doing the Shark Tank method, it's going into a common list. So it becomes more convoluted data as far as the early macro data that you'd be collecting to try to identify recruiting issues. But there's also the benefit of efficiency. So I'm able to, by deploying the Shark Tank method, have multiple different numbers reaching out to a driver. Maybe a driver doesn't like a 708 number. Maybe they answer for a 423 number, or have recruiters with area codes similar to the drivers reaching out so they don't think it's spam. There is a benefit to that. But at the same point, if recruiter that works in mornings and doesn't work in the evenings wants to reach out to a driver, there's still a recruiter that can reach out in the evening. So it's not isolated to a particular individual's restrictions as their work hours. So it's important to look at which method is going to work best for your team. But right now, that's something that you're seeing a lot of recruiting departments address because you're having to focus on your foundation right now, your core competencies as a recruiting department. It's not always about speed to lead, speed to hire. Those things matter. But in a market like we're in right now, where most people are at capacity, if you focus on these cornerstones of your recruiting department, when the pendulum swings and volume becomes a game again, you've improved that foundation that's going to set your team and the organization up for success.
Yeah, I remember one thing though that we tried when I was managing a recruiting department. We did round robin on everything. So we did round robin on the leads. Obviously, if someone wasn't there, we would distribute the leads that had came in overnight amongst the other recruiters. And we also did round robin on the phone. So like it would start ringing on the next person, who didn't get the last phone call, and it went around the room, and would go from recruiter to recruiter until somebody picked up the phone. But then we actually had a big push because we started a whole new division and we had to grow it really fast. And we found this neat trick that our phone system did where it would dial everybody's phone at the same time. So when someone would call in, literally everyone's phone rang and the first person to pick up got the call. And man, did that caused so much stress, but it worked so well.
So what's cool is like our CDL Life has a cool tool that we deploy called the Connect tool. And so a recruiter can actually, on a lead, put in their extension, their work hours, and then the call center and the remarketing on the back end will reach out to those drivers that might not have been reachable to then get them re-engaged with that particular recruiter that put that entry in. There's certain tools that you can leverage to benefit your organization, but this is the time that you need to inquire about those tools. This is the time that you should, while you're near capacity, be taking these sales calls from different organizations and hearing what they have to offer, if nothing more than to educate yourself at what new tools are out there, because a lot of companies like ourselves have deployed new tools to help recruiters in today's market, because it is much more different than it was a couple years ago. It was much more different than it was a year ago, to be honest with you. And this is where the values come from, looking at those cornerstones, whether it's your video, your marketing, your recruiting, whatever it is. Look at these core competencies and make sure that you're putting your best foot forward, because if you're not, someone else is, and then you're putting yourself at a disadvantage.
It's true. And being on this side, I can tell you this year, like there's going to be seeing some stuff coming down the pipeline. There's going to be some game changing tools that are almost like AI type terrifying coming down the pipeline. But it's pretty exciting stuff.
And not that AI that people categorize as AI just because it's a catchword. Like, there's some real cool stuff coming down that we've been working on. So I'm excited.
Hot Seat Services has Rent a Recruiter.
Wait!
Hey Michael, have you heard that Hot Seat Services Rent a Recruiter service will place their staff in your organization similar to a temporary hire model?
No way, what else does it do?
Follow me, I have to tell everyone. They take leads in existing databases to put new hires into your business's trucks.
Well, shiver me timbers! What else?
Come on! Their model is more cost efficient because their recruiters are trained and can get your pipeline flowing easier and faster.
No way. Anything else?
No matter how many hires they make, it's a set cost per week, so the more they get, the better their client's cost per hire gets.
Holy sh**.
For more information and to find out for yourself, go to hotseatservices.com.
All right, now it's time for our main topic in our segment, Make Sense, Make Sense. So like we talked about earlier, we're talking about how to make your offer memorable. Like what can your company do to make your message, your branding, and all of that stick out from the pack?
Paul, I kind of want to poke you first on this because you and I come from different sides, but originated a lot of our experience in the recruiting side. So you're on the front side of this. You are the expert when it comes to video work for making people stand out. That happens before we even hit the recruiting side. So tell me on your end what you think makes the biggest impact on that portion.
Well, I think a big part of it comes down to one thing we always talk about, when you're talking to a driver on the phone when you're recruiting, it's all about relationships. It's all about getting to know that person and acknowledging their experience. That's how you build rapport. That's basically how you build connections, which are, the most important part about the job. So the thing is when you're putting out your message, it's important to let your audience know that you understand where they're coming from. It shouldn't just be about you talking about yourself. It should be you talking about what you can do to help the person that you're trying to attract. For instance, there's this thing in advertising. A lot of people want to double down on positivity. Like, oh, this could happen and this could happen. If you work here, this is great. Like, there's parts of the job that are terrible. Like being a truck driver, just straight up, whether it's, the one spot for every 11 trucks, parking situation we got going on, the argument about like what is pay like versus the actual time spent versus how they get paid. There's, a lot of different things that, not necessarily your organization or your company can help make better for the driver necessarily because some of it's out of your hands. It's just part of the job. But by going out of your way to acknowledge those parts of the job that like kind of suck that you necessarily can't make better, but acknowledging you'll do everything in your power to make those parts suck less to the best of your ability, speaks almost more volumes than just talking about the good stuff. Because at that point it's relatable and it shows that you are in this with the driver. And the other thing too is, drivers talk, so like, let's say that, the best part about your company is your equipment, right? But you're out here putting out ads that say the best part is the pay. That might not be the case. So if a driver researches your company and you're all like, oh, our pay is incredible, our home time's incredible, and they go to talk to one of your drivers and they're like, oh man, hands down, the best part is the equipment. That other stuff is okay, but the equipment makes it worth it. You A, missed an opportunity, and B, your actual, like, you have a touch point that's not matching your other touch points, which then creates a sense of skepticism. So your drivers that you currently have are going to be the best people to tell you how to go about that.
Exactly. And so that's why I wanted to touch upon you for this, because that's the first part of this. The second part is when it gets to your recruiting department. That is your first human interaction outside of the marketing, where they have to be on point, putting their best self forward. The driver's going to buy into the offer slightly, but then they're completely going to buy into that recruiter. And if that recruiter is a failure at their job or a failure to communicate the job properly, the company's at a disadvantage right then and there. So the recruiting department has to be in sync with the work that that's being put in on the front end from people like yourself and the organization. They can only put out so much before it comes to that human element. And that recruiting department needs to be a well-oiled machine, which means they got to be well informed. They got to be singing the same tune as the marketing. And a lot of times what you'll find is recruiting departments don't even know what marketing's out there. I've seen that time after time again. Some of the most successful recruiting initiatives that I've seen to help you set yourself apart from the rest of the pack has been having your recruiting department know what ads are out there. They're engaging, they're sharing them across their own networks. But more than anything, they're educated at what they're saying. So if a driver comes in there and says, well, I saw this, the recruiter can immediately address it because they've seen it as well. So it's one of the things that when I'm out there consulting people on some of the best practices, I encourage them. Send out any marketing to your recruiters. I actually employ them to send it out prior to launching it so the recruiters can not only be aware of it, but the recruiter might catch something that shouldn't go out there. It should be a very holistic approach with the marketing, and everyone should be aware of it. And I even employ people to sit there and give it to operations. So if you're going to try to stand out, have good marketing, have a good message, make sure it aligns, and make sure your team's aligned with it. But I think there's someone else that can help us with this, Paul, and I think it's time to get over to the passenger seat.
Well, yeah. Who do we have in the passenger seat today?
We got Rhett over there at Christensen Transportation. How's it going, Rhett? Welcome to Cents Per Mile.
Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Good morning. You're out there doing this, brother. Tell us a little bit about your experience about how to make something memorable.
Yeah, no, well, first off, I'd like to stop and say, listening in, I really like what you had to say there. And, I've been guilty of that myself in the past of communicating with the marketing team and not letting it trickle across the line there, and so when we have, I can speak for our operation specifically. Occasionally a local position will come up and we'll only advertise for that local position as long as the position exists, of course, or until it's filled. So just really making sure that the people that are on the phones understand those timelines, that we're not still offering, they shouldn't have to ask me, hey, is that Tennessee position still open? They should know that should be my job. So I really appreciate what you guys are saying there. That said, we do have an in-house marketing person that handles all of our social media and our advertising, kind of a go-between with our vendors as well. And that's our whole ball game, is trying to engage with people in at an organic level. For us, we rely a lot on that social media presence and what we post on social media to kind of be a differentiator, because you can only look at so many ads with a truck and a logo and a driver that looks happy. And you can only arrange those pieces of the marketing so many different ways to make them stand out. So it's my opinion, someone who doesn't create marketing, and I'm sure someone who does create marketing will hate me for saying this, is that part of your brand that you have to learn to bring across is just who you are as a company. Everybody, the same way everybody's going to put a truck and a driver and a logo and on a screen, is they have a tendency, we all have a tendency to say we're a family. We all know that's kind of a curse word, right? So I don't know what the secrets are, because every culture is going to be different. But to me, the secret is actually having a culture that is communicated. I tell my recruiters all the time, I want you to be happy here. I want to help you be happy in this job, because drivers know when you're on the phone with them whether our culture that we portray in the marketing holds water. They know when they talk to you on the phone whether this is actually a place they want to be. So that's my background: culture development, leadership development, things like that. When I came to be the director of recruiting here, I knew nothing about recruiting, but I knew how to build a good culture. And there was already a great culture here when I came here. So that to me has been the focus. And maybe I'm different in that regard, that I think that the culture is a differentiator. But that's how I hope that we stick out.
Well, and so you and I have a unique relationship. Besides knowing each other for a period of time, we work together. And so I can attest to when we got ready to do some marketing with you guys, uh, the onboarding is slightly different than what you typically get. We focused a lot of our conversation around that culture and how to communicate that culture. That was a big part of your conversation. I mean, that stands out because this is part of your mission, is to communicate that culture in your marketing. So obviously that has to make sense. You can't sit there and be putting out BS. It has to be the actual culture, because if a driver walks into the organization and it's not, they're going to walk out. So what's some of the standout points for you that you see are important to drivers, that you see are most effective to standing out?
So I'll just run through our main core values at Christensen: our community, integrity, communication, and accountability. To me, the community and the communication thing seems to be really heavy on the minds of drivers. They want to feel like, whether they say it or not, we all want to feel like we're a part of something, and that what the work that you do here really does matter to us. Not to use the "you're not just a number" cliche, but kind of that feeling that your work is important. You're not just one of a few hundred trucks out there. But also that communication, I think I hear that more than anything. It's like, we just want to know what's going on. And that's on the whole organization.
That's been a theme of this season, is communication. You can't have a relationship without proper communication. So a lot of what I'm hearing from you is actions speak louder than words. And so you guys are focused on capturing those actions and then making them the words that you're communicating in your offer. Is that pretty correct?
I couldn't have said it better myself. It's like, you do this for a living.
Don't tell anyone. It's a secret. I'm a professional. So, if someone wanted to reach out to you and possibly drive for you or inquire more about how to be part of your organization, how would they go about doing that?
Well, I would hope that you could get on any device and find us within, 30 seconds. Otherwise, our marketing team's not doing their job. But yeah.
Hey, thanks for coming on, Sons per Mile, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, fellas.
Every day you pass trucks on the highway. For most, the person behind the wheel is just an afterthought. Not for us. CDL Life is the driver's #1 source for trucking news and community. With an engaged audience of 1.4 million unique users, we know drivers. A diverse group of real hardworking people looking for products, solutions, and opportunities, all to improve their daily lives in and out of the truck. As a trusted source, we're here to help with that search, whether it be through our 2.6 million monthly page views, our monthly 71 million plus social media user reach, our 23,000 engaged app users, or our newsletter that hits over 195,000 inboxes. We know drivers. All right, so now it's time to go on location, and today we have David Pike from NFI.
Welcome to Cents Per Mile, David. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome today. Thanks for having me, everybody. Good to see you all.
Thanks for coming on. But, you're over at NFI, man. You guys have this incredible culture. Tell us a little bit about how you guys go about making things stand out as far as NFI is concerned.
It's interesting because from listening to a lot of what's been going on behind the scenes and the conversations already, I think you all are right. I mean, there's a lot to be said about culture. There's a lot to be said about what drivers look for. But I also think that there's a missing piece that's, do drivers really even know what to look for when they start looking for jobs? And I think that we are all on a quest to find the perfect job. And, it's some folks love the over the road life. Some of them love the home life. Some of them love being home every day. Some of them love the weekend gig. Some of them love X, Y, and Z. And, what's made NFI very special is the fact that, we are a truly dedicated carrier. And so many of our folks are home every single day. Over 90% of our folks make it home to see their families and make good money doing it. So it is a special breed of driver that loves that type of work, and it's made us very successful.
So when you're trying to get out there and stand out amongst drivers, what's some of the things that you believe are the most important ways to set yourself aside from the rest of the pack? Because let's be honest, a lot of this stuff can be daunting and the same. It's very vanilla.
Well, I think, in my years of doing this, Charles, you and I have gotten to know each other. Paul, all of us have. 30 years in this business, I've seen a lot come and go. And I think we as an industry have done ourselves a disservice from recruiting students many years ago, that pre-hire letter that we would send out just was meaningless as you look back at it. It was just to capture them, and it jaded the drivers. And I think they're still jaded to this day because of that. And, I kind of coined a phrase that I teach my recruiters still to this day. I mean, we as, adults in life, we'll spend months looking at houses, months looking at cars. We'll go to Walmart and Target and Best Buy and shop a big screen TV for 3-4 weeks. But hell, a driver will talk to a recruiter and change a job in 15 minutes on the phone. And it makes no sense. We listen to all the hyperbole and all the fun, talk, and we'll change a job, and that's changing your life. So I think that part of what I have adopted about halfway through my career, and really I'd always preached it, but really from a leadership perspective, is if you're on my team, we're here to change people's lives, period. And if you don't take that to heart, you don't understand that you are impacting someone's life when you give them a job, no matter whether it's here or any other company, then you don't belong on this team. Seriously. Because we impact people's lives. And if you are bringing them onto NFI or anywhere for that matter, and that is not the right position for them, we do not know what limb that person may be on. It could be their last limb. It could be the situation that puts them into homelessness. It could be in the situation that puts them into bankruptcy, because we were looking for an opportunity for a hire, not for the best opportunity for that driver. These are professionals. These are men and women. These are human beings. So personally, I have taken that approach, though, Charles, and to me, it is what I will live and die on to the day I leave this industry. We're here to impact and change the world. We're here to impact and change people's lives. And I think that drives the culture behind our company and drives the culture behind my team. And if we fail at it because of that, so be it. I will go down happy because of that, and I will still live a comfortable life because of that. It's about doing the right thing.
So one of the cool things about our conversation, you touched upon it a little bit, but I think you're being a little modest here, is some of the most impactful conversations we've had have been about the education piece. That's one of the ways you guys like to stand out, is you want to educate, not necessarily educate about NFI, and educate about the industry, which is something a lot of people don't spend the time or money to do. I want to make sure we capture that, because we've had a lot of conversations outside of this about it. And I want to make sure that credit is being due. That's important piece, I think. How do you curve all the bad JoJo that comes our way when, it's so much of it? So a little bit on that.
Well, I think first off, it starts off with the new drivers in this industry. And I think that, the platform you have, we could create an entire series off of this. We could create hours upon hours of content and specify just content galore. Because it starts with understanding great equipment. Well, great. We've all got great equipment. Vast majority of companies out here have equipment that's 3 years old or newer. But the reality is any driver joining any company isn't going to get the newest truck on my fleet. Everybody is going to get the oldest truck on my yard. Think about it. I mean, that's just reality. But how do we sell that? Well, of course, on the phone call, hey, yeah, you're going to get some, nice new equipment. Well, to me, that truck is 2 years old and it's clean. To that person on the other end, that may not be what their expectation of new equipment is. So I think we've got to slow down and understand that we need to clarify what's truly known as needs-based selling. We as recruiters, we as leaders have to say to our teams, slow the conversation down. Well, okay, define to me what's good equipment to you. Define to me what you're looking for. Okay, you won't drive a purple truck? Well, all I've got is purple trucks. Then let's just call it a day right now. If you won't drive a purple truck, don't come to work for me. Whatever that conversation is, let's have it. You got great benefits. Okay, well, good. What do you need in benefits? Doesn't mean you've got to cover all of that. I call them nuggets. Throughout the conversation, good recruiters will drop nuggets along the line. They will drop, we've got great benefits, we've got great equipment, we've got great home time. And they're looking for the buying signals of yes, yes, and yes. And then through that needs base, well, you said I've got great home time, great benefits, and great equipment, so why don't you come join the company? But never along the way did that recruiter or that driver qualify what those three items were. And we need to, as an industry, go back and say, are we really squared up on good equipment? Are we really squared up on good benefits? Are we really squared up on good home time? So do I put the fault on the recruiter? No. Do I put the fault on the driver? No. Do I put the fault on the industry? Yeah, I do. Because we're all in too much of a rush to put a driver in a seat. And we're all in too much of a rush because that driver is upset at his last dispatch to get the next job. We all have some responsibility, and we've got to take that time to just slow down and make sure it's the right position we're putting them in. And I think each of those are just three prime topics that we all know drivers love to capitalize on. But it could go into a variety of issues, and it isn't about just home time equipment and pay and trucks. We know it could be a variety of things. So we've got to make sure we slow down and we really talk to and impact these people's lives with really getting deep into what does it really mean to you to be home?
And that's key. People. We're dealing with people in the business of people. So if people wanted to find you, David, what's a good way to find you?
Well, much like anyone else, just go to NFI, careers at NFI, and you will find us. We're all local, got to live in the areas in which we operate, and take time. And listen, we won't have a job for you in 3 days. I promise you, it's going to take you a week or two to go through our process. Why? Because we're going to vet you out. You're going to talk to our local managers. You're going to talk to my recruiters. They're going to make sure that you're right for the job as much as that they are right for you. And we would prefer to be upfront and tell you that don't leave your job thinking you're going to be employed in 3 days with me. It's going to take a week or two, and we're okay with that because we want you to be a long-term employee at NFI. And to us, that's why we run low turnover, and it works for us. But NFI, we got operations throughout the country, about 4,000 plus trucks, all dedicated, and love to have you guys give us a call.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on Cents Per Mile, and look forward to seeing all the exciting stuff you guys got going.
Hope to be back on soon. Let's maybe carry this conversation on for teaching everybody. I think there's a great opportunity for us.
Absolutely. Thanks, David.
Oh, Charles, good to see you both.
All right. Well, that's a wrap. Lots of good stuff. But like always, all good things must come to an end. So I'm Charles Gracie, the host of Cents Per Mile.
And I'm your co-host, Paul Gibson. See you next time.